Training camp is around the corner, which means position battles are looming. I'm here today to walk you through the top position battles for the Carolina Panthers.
Brace yourself for the ultimate Carolina Panthers experience. Welcome to Two Growls, One Roar, the podcast that hits harder than a Luke Kuechly tackle. We're diving deep into the heart of Panther Nation, bringing you unrivaled passion, insider takes, and pure gridiron fire. From Wilmington to the cosmos, this is your home for the fiercest football talk east or west of Charlotte.
Welcome in, folks, to another edition of the Two Growls, One Roar podcast. If you guys are here, please hit the subscribe button. That's all I got to say. Now, we've got a lot to talk about, man. We do, with the state of the Carolina Panthers roster. Now, I am broadly speaking about training camp, knowing that we're in OTAs, that we've got mini camp. So, we're getting ahead of ourselves a little bit. But even now, there's a point in time where we can just take a look at the roster and say, you know what, I think we can kind of analyze a few groups that stick out to us and who we think like, oh yeah, maybe you want to watch there, where things going to land. So number one on the list, no fancy graphics for you guys today. Sorry about that. One day, we'll come back. We'll get it in some upcoming episodes. But number one on the list, the wide receiver rumble. Who will catch on? So many really bad dad joke puns in there. I think in general, when you look at the state of this room as it is today, and we go down this list, and I've already broken this thing down a few times for you guys, but we're really talking about the back end of this roster. Tetairoa McMillan, your starter. Xavier Legette, also a starter. Adam Thielen, Hunter Renfrow, and Jalen Coker. I also put Jimmy Horn Jr. in the mix. And for me, it feels like 6 wide receivers is the magic number. And I think getting to 6 means we're also, and I don't have running backs on the list, but I think also there's going to be a competition for that third spot between Etienne and Blackshear. And there's a decent chance, if the Panthers don't want to hold on to too much on the offensive side of the ball, because you have to balance out that 53-man roster between offense and defense, but potential that we see Raheem Blackshear cut as we get into this. But for me, I do think, I personally, just based off what I've seen and just the belief in him, and it could change, but I think Hunter Renfrow kind of has a notch. I almost think, too, because, they just drafted Jimmy Horn Jr. I mean, it's possible they could move on, but it just would not make sense. So the odd man out, I think, in my opinion, is David Moore. But I'm not here to write him off just yet, simply because of the connection with Dave Canales. The production we saw last year, I mean, he's not lights out, but the dude can produce. And he's reliable, and he did have a little bit of connection with Bryce Young. So if there were some like wild, just weird thing, somebody goes down, we don't want that to happen. I think there's definitely a possibility. And maybe he does hang on to the practice squad unless, of course, somebody ends up wanting to pick him up. I feel like Jalen Coker should also be good in the mix, but you never know, man. And I'm not one of those that is here to say Jalen Coker is not going to be a Panther in 2025, but you just have to be a little bit more realistic with your expectations and thoughts on the team. So the wide receiver room, the battle that is, I mean, when you go back and look at this, of course, Muhsin Moose Muhammad III, unfortunately, had an injury and was waived. It's not like he's going on IR. Good chance he's not going to make it. We aren't even really getting into the bottom depth that also has a chance with TJ Luther, who was just brought back, Dan Chisena, Bryson Tremaine, Kobe Hudson, Jacoby George. Like, these guys are really good football players, and it's going to be a truly tough competition to figure out of this group who ends up making it. So wide receiver, big question there in a positive way. We move now to the defensive side of the ball, and we have an edge overhaul. So the new outside linebacker room, rushing attack. So we have a major facelift on the defensive side of the ball, along the defensive front, bringing in 3 new additions, 2 through the draft, 1 through free agency, to try to get to the quarterback. Like, that was the purpose. You let go of Jadeveon Clowney. Maybe, I wasn't the biggest fan, but Dave Canales did say we're developmentally minded. We bring in 2 outside linebackers or 2 edge rushers and give them all those reps. It's valuable time for those guys. So the shift is to get younger. So I think where this whole thing plays out is how quickly will we see Nick Scorton and Princely Umanmielen on the field, whether it's in down and distance situations, pass rush situations, or do one of these guys start? I think there's potential when we talk about competition at this position that you could have one of these guys, probably Nick Scorton, out of the mix that could be your starter. Now, below that, there's still like TBD here with DJ Wonham. I think we would assume he's a starter. Patrick Jones, who was brought over, maybe he's in the mix as well. But I think from like a depth perspective, if you were to go veteran up front, Patrick Jones II, DJ Wonham, with a rotation of Nick Scorton and Princely Umanmielen, and DJ Johnson. As of now, DJ Johnson sitting on the bubble. I think they would keep 5. And then if they keep up to 6, again, this is this numbers game we talk about. Thomas Kuhn, Amari Barno. Yeah, like Barno's still here, or Boogie Basham, who was brought over very early at the end of the season, early in like January, signed to a futures contract. So I have wide receiver, outside linebacker. Are we going to go young and old mix? Like, what is the pattern going to look like? But it's good. And I mean, I still think I would have liked Clowney, but for whatever reason, it just didn't pan out. So for the next position group, maybe it's not. Maybe this isn't the case. Maybe there's not a competition. Maybe it's just like, hey, this is chalk. But I do think inside linebacker, well, Josey Jewell, yes, he's a starter. Who's going to start opposite beside him? Now, I know that the team feels confidently, I would think, in Trevin Wallace. He kind of got thrown out there. I'm still not sold, but he did have a lot of pressure put on him. But, hey, we'll see. You have Christian Roseboom, who we think is more of a rotational piece, but considering the numbers production, do you potentially try to get him out there earlier? This is a room that's weak because outside of Josey Jewell, Trevin Wallace, and Christian Roseboom, you have a kind of hodgepodge of John Radigan. It's not the greatest. And then you got, rookie Bam Martin-Scott that I'm not necessarily sold on. Like, nah. And Jacoby Wyndham. So, yeah, that's a position group where I would love for the Panthers to invest. I don't know that they're going to be able to do it. We'd love to have a few additional pieces there. Like, as we talk about wide receiver, we've got plenty. Talk about outside linebacker, we've got plenty. When we start talking about inside linebacker, like, yeah, would have been nice to get someone else, but you can't do everything at once. Staying on the defensive side of the ball, have to talk about safety, right? There's no doubt safety is important. Morig, safety coming over from the Las Vegas Raiders, is your shoe-in starter, hands down. I think we're going to have a competition between Lathan Ransom and Damani Richardson for the starting position to stand beside him. I don't think Nick Scott is there, although I'd love to be proven wrong. The Panthers are going to need some help here, man. Like, inside linebacker, I think you could make do with what we have to a certain extent. Of course, if guys get injured again like last year, knock on wood, you don't want to see it. But in the event that does happen, you maybe can manage. Safety, on the other hand, Panthers ended up losing, is it 3 total, 4 safeties? Xavier Woods, Fuller, Xavier Woods, Fuller, Sam Franklin, Lonnie Johnson, 4 safeties that saw, and not all these guys saw significant playing time last year, but they lost a decent amount. And so you're having to rebuild that room. You last second bring in Nick Scott, although it wasn't really last second. They like him still, but yeah, not the best on that side of the ball. I still want to see some work. Still want to see some guys brought in there. And even cornerback, which cornerback is not on my list because there's not a competition for the starting position. I was really focused on the starters as we went through this list. Could possibly throw tight end in there. I did not throw tight end on the list as well, but tight end is also a possibility. I think the last one that I would have would be on the defensive line at the end position as we take a look at the new additions that we have. Of course, Derek Brown coming back. You have Bobby Brown. And now throwing into the mix, you're going to have either Tershawn Wharton or A'Shawn Robinson. And I don't think that's a bad thing to have those guys competing. And throwing Cam Jackson, but it's more of your tackle position. Shy total behind him. So there's going to be multiple battles. I think the battle of who's your starting end that's paired with Derek Brown. Again, is A'Shawn Robinson going to, take it? Or are we going to see Turk Wharton? Then the competition really for the backup nose tackle position, which is I think would be between Cam Jackson and Shy Tuttle. And I think there's a decent chance that Cam Jackson could end up securing that just with how big he is there on the interior. So, I mean, lots of position battles, most of them primarily on the defensive side of the ball, at least to a certain extent. Offense, not so much. Like you pretty much know who your starters are across the board. We're really talking like the back end of where this thing is going to play out. But anyways, folks, that is going to do it for today's episode. This is Carolina Dad. Y'all have a good one.